for deliberation on important topic, which is works contract. There are so many intricacies and issues in works contract and construction services. I'm going to take overall works contract and construction services, wherein I'm going to discuss various intricacies which is involved, and we all are looking for the answer. Before I start, at the outset, let me put a request that we all are passing through COVID-19 time period. The further announcement for the red zone, orange zone and green zone is being made and guidelines issued. And for the red zone, it is continuing till 17th of May. My humble submission and prayer to all the learned members would be, as I'm being told that your association is doing a noble cause and they are serving to the needy people at this crisis situation. They are contributing open heart. They are doing their best, trying their best, and whatever best possible from each one of you, you are contributing. But it is a time once again to remind you, whatever best we can do, we must do that. As an association, that kind of efforts you are doing to provide relief measure by way of food, by way of giving cloths, whatever best possible during this COVID-19 time period to a needy person and people around is really a blessed work. Please, you must continue to do that and do your best, whatever best possible. And of course, I say that stay at home, safe, be happy, and I always believe together we will defeat Corona. So let's be united together to fight against Corona and do your best to extend your help and support to needy person around your locality. If possible, extend your arms and legs to provide your relief measure as well. So let me start. One or two things importantly. I want that you should put your microphone on a mute mode, first of all. And second, if the IT guy can put my screen as a main screen. Is it visible as a main screen or it's coming in a box only? I don't know. That's the. If you put me on a main screen, then it can be viewed in a larger way. Okay. Now all the members are joining in and they are interested on this topic. That's the reason this topic is being allocated to me, works contract. What I would be requesting all the participants that I will try from my side to make it simple for all of you. You can put your question maybe at the end of my deliberation. I will take up your queries and will try to respond back. But in between, I would be posting query and would be looking active participation from you. You'd be putting in a chat box, question answers box, your yes, no, whatever answer you believe is correct, you must write down as and when I'm posting such queries. So I want that you should be actively participating. I'm not going to make any PowerPoint presentation today. Rather, I want that you should contribute extempore, walk the talk, and we must try to understand this works contract and the GST as a lively session. I'm being told that you have done many other topic during webcast series. I really want that this particular program which I'm doing today with all of you, you make it a great one, great success with the active participation from both sides, from my side and from your side. And I know I'm successful in my deliberation only when you, each one of you who is watching now, contribute and participate. You can write back, you can give your answer as and when I'm posting queries, so that it is going to help all of us together. And for my understanding, I will come to know that yes, members are getting my point and they are appreciating, then I will proceed further. So let's start with the works contract and construction services in GST. As we know that the works contract as defined under section 2 subsection 119 of CGST Act, works contract means a contract where you got transfer of property in goods either in same form or otherwise, and which includes construction, erection, commissioning, installation, completion, fitting out, repair, maintenance, renovation, alteration, building, fabrication. There are 14 terms used in this definition, 14 terms. So construction is one of the spice of works contract services. Repair is one of the spice of works contract services. So works contract services is two-eyed a term, and then it is in relation to immovable property. Immovable property. So difference of works contract services pre-GST versus post-GST. Pre-GST, it was in relation to movable or immovable property. But post-GST, it is always in relation to immovable property. So first, maybe you can take a piece of paper and note down the crux point, maybe a pointer, which can help you later to digest what all we have discussed today and concluded today. So works contract services in GST, it's always in relation to immovable property. Second, as we know that works contract services includes both material and labor. Both. There is material also, there is service also. It may be in any combination. Maybe material is 60%, labor is 40%, or vice versa, in any combination thereof. So next question comes, works contract services to be termed as supply of goods or supply of services, because it includes both material and labor. So it is very much important that we must know that what is this works contract service? Supply of goods or supply of services. Para 6A of Schedule 2. Para 6A of Schedule 2 says, works contract services shall be deemed as a supply of service contract. Supply of service contract. So irrespective of fact, how much material involved, how much labor or service involved, it will always be supply of service contract. Second point. Third point, which I want you should respond back in question answers chat box. Can I, if I am a works contract service provider, divide my contract of works contract, because it includes both material and labor? Am I permitted to divide my works contract services separately for material and separately for labor? I'm looking for the answer in a chat box. You must answer it. Can I divide that? Yes or no? That's what I'm referring to. Please tell me, can I divide that? I really want, okay, I'm getting some of the answers and looking from answer from each one of you where you'd be saying yes, it can be divided or it cannot be divided. Yes. So everyone is saying no, but there's one Mr. R. Chaudhary, he's saying yes, depending on the contract formation, to my mind, and to provide clarity. Even if you got contract information of material and labor, if it is works contract services, you cannot divide separately for material and for labor. This is a thumb rule for the works contract services. You cannot divide. Now, having said that, I would like to draw your attention on one of the important part. In GST, there's a concept called composite supply versus mixed supply. What is this concept, composite supply versus mixed supply? Composite supply means there are two or more taxable supplies, two or more. Because in works contract also we see there is supply of goods and supply of services. But deemed as a supply of service as a whole. So I'm drawing one example for all of you, wherein I want you should contribute and give your opinion to me. Composite supply says two or more taxable supplies naturally bundle in conjunction with each other. If it is composite supply, then this combo would be taxable on the basis of principal supply of that combo. Principal supply of that combo. And what is mixed supply? Two or more supply, there is no word used taxable. Two or more supply not naturally bundled. Sold under single price, then that combo would be taxable on the basis of highest rate of that combo. So this is the concept of composite supply and mixed supply. Let me take one example and ask each one of you that you are having car, assume you are having car and your car got damaged. You brought your car to me, I'm a service provider, service center. You brought your car to me for get your car repaired. For repairing your car, I require auto component and I require my services to get your car repaired. So let's assume for repairing of this car, 8,000 rupees auto component used, auto component chargeable at 28% GST rate, and 2,000 labor charges. And labor is taxable at the rate of 18%. So I'm going to charge 10,000 rupees to you. You brought your car for getting your car repaired. So while repairing car, I'm supposed to charge 10,000 rupees, which includes 8,000 rupees auto component, 28% GST rate, and 2,000 rupees labor charges, where GST rate is 18%. Now I'm going to ask 2-3 questions to you, and I will look at your question answers box as well. My first question, please tell me this repairing of car is a composite supply. Please tell me, repairing of car is a composite supply because it got material, it got labor also. Tell me in the chat box, question answer. Is it a composite supply first? So there are lot many things, answers coming in yes, no, yes, no. In that way it is coming. Okay. So I'm getting mixed answer, meaning thereby, tell me, though this contract repairing of car is having 8,000 rupees auto component and 2,000 rupees labor charges, but did you want to buy auto component from me? Was it your intention to buy auto component? To my mind, you brought your car for getting your car repaired. So intention was, you were looking for supply of repairing services. Your intention was not to buy auto component. Though I have used the auto component worth 8,000 rupees, but still your intention was to get your car repaired. So this auto component got naturally bundled with repairing services. And of this combo, the principal supply is supply of repairing services, not the goods auto component. So to my mind, it's a composite supply. Next question, and that too, it is a supply of service. Tell me the whole combo going to be taxable at 28% or 18%. So you may write down in a chat box 28% or 18%, please, in a chat box. 28 or 18, all which it is 18%. 1 8. When you're terming this repairing of car as a composite supply, and that composite supply as services, which is repairing services, then whole combo, including auto component, so 10,000 can be charged with 18% GST rate. Second question. Now, third question is very, very important. And here I want to draw and want to take your answer. Third question. Can I, as a service provider, divide this contract? Like I said in works contract, you cannot divide your contract separately for material and for labor. I said that for works contract. But can I do bifurcation of this composite supply of services, which is pertaining to movable property? Only distinction in works contract, it was in relation to immovable property. But in repairing of car, it is pertaining to movable property. I'm only asking, can I divide, which I could not do for works contract, for this repairing of car, auto component separately 28% GST rate, labor separately 18% GST rate. Can I do that? This is the answer I'm looking in your chat box, question answer session. Can I do that? So I'm getting answer, and answers are mixed. Yes, everyone is saying answers okay. Someone says no also, someone says yes also, someone giving information to me as well. My answer to all of you, that there is one circular, and this circular got issued on 8th June 2018, and circular number 47. This circular issued by CBIC and taken the same example, repairing of car, and they have said yes, it can be bifurcated if you know exact value of material and labor. Now, my two submission on this point. The first submission, if circular says it can be bifurcated, then the concept of composite supply will go for a toss. Then what is the need of composite supply? Definition of composite supply. Then we do not require this composite supply. So this circular is playing contrary, I must say, with the concept of composite supply. Now, if this bifurcation, which is permissible, now the circular has come out, and circular, when beneficial to the SSC, I can definitely use, none is stopping me. Then I'm saying that for movable property, there the bifurcation, composite supply can be bifurcated separately for charging for goods and for services. But this concept, which was given for movable property, cannot be applied for works contract services. No choice. But you know, for a particular industry, solar power panel, EPC contract, supply of solar power along with installation and commissioning, erection, commissioning and installation. And solar power, you know that there are two kinds of variant. One is which is embedded with earth, one which is just screwed only. So I'm talking about which is embedded with earth. If it is embedded with earth, it becomes immovable property. That is the concept of what is immovable property, something which is embedded with earth. Now, There are two contrary advance ruling, one from Karnataka, from your state, and one from Maharashtra. So question was, if a taxpayer supplying solar power panel along with erection, commissioning and installation is going to be supply of goods or supply of services. Majorly you got solar power panel cost. In such contract, the major cost pertaining to solar power panel. Erection, commissioning, installation may not be. So maybe this erection, commissioning, installation is incidental. Now we need to determine whether this contract is a supply of goods or supply of services. Once it is embedded with earth, it becomes works contract, and if it is works contract, it is supply of service, then 18% GST rate applicable. If it is composite supply, assume for the sake because major component solar power panel and this erection, commissioning, installation is only incidental, then it would be supply of goods, then GST rate is 5%. And this particular issue got contrary judgment. One advanced ruling authority says is a supply of goods, hence 5% GST rate. Another advanced ruling says no, it's a works contract. Supply of service, 18% GST rate applicable. And that is the way this issue was having divergent perspective. But government for this industry only, has created deeming fiction only for this industry. They say in such contract, EPC contract for solar power panel, what happened? In such contract, it will be assumed that 70% is goods and 30% is services, meaning thereby 70% which is goods chargeable 5% GST rate and 30% which is services taxable at 18%. And this provision applicable from 1st January 2019. 1st January 2019. Now to my mind, this is suiting to this particular industry, but creating deeming fiction in a works contract, which by default cannot be bifurcated and will always be supply of service. But only for this industry, this deeming fiction is being created. But still this deeming fiction is subject to whether this formula which is being envisaged, 70:30 for goods and services, prospectively applicable, or it can be seen for a contract started prior to 1st January 2019 and continued post 1st January 2019. So even this clarification is from 1st January 2019, but still debate going on. To my mind, whenever such kind of clarification comes and which is benefiting to the taxpayer, to my mind, it can be applied retrospectively. So on third point, first I said works contract, it is in relation to immovable property. Second, I said it is supply of service as per schedule 2. Third, I said it cannot be bifurcated, but for this industry, deeming fiction exists. Having said that, now let me move to the next component of contract and construction services. Next component I'm going to do for input tax credit and valuation when we look at works contract and construction services, ITC and valuation. For ITC, input tax credit, you know GST provisions are liberalized. Now GST credit is available on input service and capital goods, which is used in the course or further in sub business, exception. Credit available but not available for certain input and input services under section 17 subsection 5, 17 subsection 5 of CGST Act. Credit is not available even though you are using the same in the course or further in sub business. So there are two relevant sections which is pertaining to my works contract. Let me done these two subsection. Section 17 subsection 5 clause C. I want your attention because this ITC and valuation is so good interlinked. I will try to make it simple for all of you, provided you are paying attention, noting it down, and I'm going to ask you in your chat box. You need to respond back as well. Now, ITC, input tax credit, 17 subsection 5 clause C. It says that credit is not available. GST credit is not available for works contract services for construction of immovable property. So first line, credit is not available for construction of immovable property. So when I'm discussing 17 subsection 5 clause C, let me start with a case study so that you can understand in clear terms. Let's say you all become my client. You are, let's say, Reliance Industries Limited. You all are my client. You have given a contract to me. I'm your main contractor for construction of your factory building. You have given a contract to me for 100 crore rupees for construction of your factory building. I'm your main contractor. So what this provision says, 17 subsection 5 clause C, it says credit not available on works contract services. Bimal Jain going to provide to you works contract services for construction of immovable property. So I'm constructing this factory building for you. Credit not available in your hands. GST I'm going to charge on my works contract. Credit not available to you. Then further this provision says, except plant and machinery. So credit available for works contract services if it is a case for plant and machinery. So what is plant and machinery? Plant and machinery as defined in this provision, any apparatus, equipment, machinery fixed by way of foundation or structural support and which is used for taxable outward supply. So for this plant and machinery, works contract services credit available. And what is not included in definition of plant and machinery? Land and building, telecommunication tower, or any pipeline laid outside the factory is not included in the definition of plant and machinery. So credit will not be available on these three items. So what I said in 17 subsection 5 clause C, if I'm undertaking construction of this factory building for you, for my client, charging GST on works contract services, credit not available to you. But if it is for plant and machinery, credit available to you, and then further goes that if it is inward supply of works contract to a main contractor, then credit is available. So let me explain so that you can understand now. I got 100 crore rupees contract. Let's say I'm subletting this contract of 50 crore to another contractor. Let's say A. So 50 crore rupees are given to subcontracted to A. A is also undertaking works contract services and then giving back to main contractor Bimal Jain B, charging GST. And Bimal Jain then raising invoice to my client, you are my client, for 100 crore rupees. So if I ask this question in a chat box, I need answer in clear terms. You will only say yes and no so that I will get an idea. Yes, you are getting my point. So first point, subcontractor charging GST on 50 crore rupees to main contractor Bimal Jain with a credit available to Bimal Jain. Tell me yes or no. So your answer should be yes and no. Credit available, please tell me. All right, credit available. Everyone has said credit available. Second, Bimal Jain charging GST to client for construction of factory building, credit available to my client. Please tell me yes or no. Credit not available. Perfect. You all are right. Such a lovely audience. You are getting everything now. Had it been the case of construction pertaining to plant and machinery, if this is the service I given to my client with a credit available to my client, please tell me, with a credit available to my client, yes, perfect, perfect, perfect. All right, all right. Just one more distinction, one more distinction. Now, what is the meaning of construction? Because I've used the term construction, right? By way of explanation, in the same provision for 17 subsection 5 clause C and clause D, construction is being defined as reconstruction, renovation, addition, alteration, or repair. 5 terms used: reconstruction, addition, alteration, renovation, and repair. 5 terms used. This is included within the definition of construction of immovable property, and whose value is capitalized with the immovable property. Then only it is called construction of immovable property. So construction can be of this 5 type, inclusive with a bigger definition, and when whose value is capitalized. So if this is the case, let me change my example. Had it been the case of repair of a building, and wherein client is not capitalizing the value of repair, it is charged to my revenue account, PL account. It is not capitalized. Then in that case, whether credit is available, this is the question to all of you. Please write in your comment box. Whether credit available if value is not capitalized? Yes, he can claim. Yes, all right. All right. Perfect, perfect. So you all are getting my point. Now, I did one part, 17, subsection 5, clause C. Now coming to section 17, subsection 5, clause D. What is clause D now? Says goods or services. Now here they are using goods or services, and C was talking about works contract services. Goods or services used for construction of immovable property on its own account other than plant and machinery, so plant and machinery again excluded, even though used in the course of furtherance of business, even though used in the course of furtherance of business. Now, to understand this example, this provision 17 subsection 5 clause D, let me create one example for you. The same contract, 100 crore rupees, 100 crore rupees. Being client, you purchase iron and steel, and you have paid GST to your supplier who supplied cement and iron steel. Now this goods you purchased and that were meant for construction of immovable property. My first question, can my client get credit of GST paid on cement and iron steel, which is going to be used for construction of factory building? Tell me yes or no in a chat box. Yes or no? No, credit is not available. Those who are saying, some Mr. Natraj is saying yes, no, credit is not available. Credit is not available. Perfect, perfect. But let's say if I have purchased, I'm a main contractor. If I have purchased the cement and iron steel and paid the GST to my supplier, which I'm using for construction of factory building, whether main contractor or subcontractor purchasing goods or services for using for construction of immovable property, with the credit available in the hands of main contractor or subcontractor? Please tell me yes or no. Yes, credit available. Rightly said, credit available. Perfect, perfect. That's the answer I was looking for. Now I've said both the provision to you. Now I want to make it little intricate, little complicated, and I want you to respond back to me. I'm starting with the same example that you are my client and you have given this contract to me for 100 crore. I'm a main contractor for construction of factory building. Now this 100 crore rupees you have given to me. Let's assume hypothetically, an example is, you have purchased 50 crore, client have purchased 50 crore cement and iron steel and paid the GST to the supplier. We have concluded from 17 subsection 5 clause D that credit is not available to my client. But now what you're doing, you're giving this cement and iron steel to me, main contractor, F4C, free of cost, to be used for this construction of factory building. Now Bimal Jain got contract of 100 crore, but since you purchased 50 crore cement and iron steel and giving it back to me F4C, then ultimately I'm going to charge 50 crore from you, because 50 crore ultimately you provided. The contract value worth is 100 crore. My question goes back to all of you. If Bimal Jain has to raise the invoice, which he is supposed to, and he is entitled only for 50 crore, whether Bimal Jain has to include 50 crore rupees F4C, free of cost supplied goods or services, in my valuation, main contractor valuation, for chargeability of GST. And for valuation, you have to go back to section 15, and section 15 you have to recall by yourself. So I'm asking you guys now, Though Bimal Jain will get only 50 crore, but do Bimal Jain as a main contractor required to include 50 crore rupees FOC cement and iron steel in my valuation for chargeability of GST? My question to all of you, please tell me yes or no. I would like to see the answer. Yes to be included, no, no, yes. Lot of things, lot of answer I'm getting from, depends on terms of contract. I'm getting these kind of answer from all of you. Let me clarify from my side. There is one provision, section 15, subsection 2, subclause B. So you may note down this on a piece of paper as well, because I'm sure you're noting down what I'm discussing today. Section 15, subsection 2, clause B, it says, if supplier is liable, of course I was liable. Contract worth is 100 crore. I was liable, 100 crore. But incurred by the recipient, you incurred the same. Then in that case, it needs to be included in my value for the chargeability of GST. 15 subsection 2 clause B says, supplier is liable, which I watch 100 crore rupees contract, incurred by recipient, my client, need to be included in my valuation. So I've concluded need to be included. Now what is business modeling is coming out. What business modeling we must do in such contract, what is importance coming out, and when it need not be included, when FOC need not be included. We know pre-GST, Vayana Builders, larger bench judgment. And this dispute was there even in pre-GST, and dispute as on date even lies in GST, provided you know the provision and you can correct your contract accordingly. When FOC need not be included, tax planning. When FOC need not be included, tax planning. And why we must do tax planning? Two questions. We must do tax planning for the region if, which was my liability, you incurred, recipient incurred, then cement and iron steel purchased by you, credit was not available to you. First loss. Second, I need to include, main contractor, supplier need to include in its valuation 100 crore. So 50 plus added FOC, and I will charge GST on works contract services, again credit not available. So there's an incremental effect to that extent of FOC supplies. So that credit is again gone and becomes cost. Why you'd be interested? We should not do that. Then what happened? We must change the contract. And contracts should be made only to the extent of 50 crore for Bimal Jain, except cement and iron steel, which is not my liability. If it is not my liability, then it is not to be included in my valuation for the chargeability of GST. Then what happened? 50 crore cement and iron steel you purchase, credit is not available. If it is not my liability, even though incurred by you, FOC supplied to me, then need not require to be included in my valuation. And there the circular issued in this regard. When we talk about tools and dies are amortized, a circular got issued in this regard and clarified this point. Then if it is not supplier's liability and incurred by recipient, then need not be included. So silver lining, which you can take down, If supplier liable incurred by the CPN, FOC need to be included in valuation. If it is not supplier's liability incurred by recipient, then need not be included. This is the clarity emerges, and I'm of the opinion this is the correct way of valuation in GST. So you must go back to such contract and recheck and cross-check. And if you're entering into new contract, please make contract on these lines so that you should not end up with extra cost because credit is not available in the hands of client. Now, having said all this thing, I would like to see in your comment box whether you got right, you got it, you understood it. If you understood it, write yes. If not, please write no. Your yes will really encourage me that you are really walking the talk and going all along with me. I need to see your answer. Yes, you got the provision right. Perfect. Perfect. So everyone is saying yes, maximum are yes, one or two are still at no. So sorry, time is the pause. I cannot carry on continuing with the same discussion prolonged. Maximum are saying yes. So this is what we need to conclude. Yes, things are going fine. Now, having said that, one more thing which I want to draw from all of you, which I'm looking for. I've already said one query someone is asking, but I've responded back. So let me carry on now. The major issue which is coming out in GST that this is falling 17 subsection 5 clause C and clause D falling into negative list. Negative list is what? Can we undertake any manufacturing without factory building? Can we undertake without having office? We necessarily require to have factory building or office for the provision of taxable outward supply. Why credit is not available? This is the $1,000,000 question which everyone is asking, why credit is available. Now here I would like to say that when GST got introduced in the country from 1st July 2017, it was envisaged with the object clause. There would be seamless flow of credit. There would be seamless flow of credit. But what is turning out to be with this block credit concept, negative list concept, credit is not available, creating cascading within the system. Seamless flow is being done away with. There was one recent ruling from Odisha High Court in Safari Retreats. In that judgment, issue was, if as a client you are getting your mall constructed, let's say you are getting your office constructed and subsequently such office are let out, mall is let out, hotel constructed, and these are used subsequently for taxable supplies, outward taxable supplies. Why credit will not be available? Orissa High Court judgment in the case of Safari Retreats. Yes, credit is made available. It was given a judgment that credit is available, but that judgment is being stayed by the Supreme Court, and there is no other contrary judgment except the advance ruling which is coming out and saying credit not available. I would like to ask you guys, the learned audience who is watching me and listening me so carefully, those Safari Retreats judgment which is being stayed in the Supreme Court and matter is sub judice, what is your take? I'm just looking for the answer from you. What is your take? You believe that Supreme Court will decide in favor of taxpayer, if it is in favor of taxpayer, means credit is available, even though 17 subsection 5 curtail my right to avail credit. Or Supreme Court going to say no, credit is not available. So I would like to see in answer your chat box, Supreme Court may decide, which is your take, that credit available. If credit available, you write yes. And if credit not available, you write no. I'm just trying to judge first my audience, then I will conclude from my side. Credit available, say yes. Credit not available, say no. Write in a chat box. What is your say? Let me see. Okay. 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 See, I'm getting answer also from the audience, and audience is saying it should be made available. Credit should be made available. That's a part of representation. That's a part of representation. Representation. I'm not discussing representation here. I'm looking for what I'm looking for, whether credit available or not available. Now let me give you one good tax planning measure. Since this subject matter is sub judice before the Supreme Court, sub judice before the Supreme Court, there may be both possibilities, yes and no, which we are not able to conclude now. But in case you are a chartered accountant and you need to advise to your client, and your client is asking me, Bimalji, can I avail this credit for construction of immovable property? Though you are having your subjective view, yes and no, yes and no. Now let me tell you one of the good tax planning measure. See, if I assume this credit is not available, then I have not taken this credit in my books of accounts. But tomorrow, if turn out to be, and Supreme Court decide, no, it is going against object clause of GST introduced in the country, hence it is ultra vires in terms of Article 19(1)(g), in terms of Article 300 capital A, because any law which got introduced on an object clause and that object clause is not being followed and going contrary in the act, to that extent it's ultra bias, void. Maybe on those lines judgment comes out. If you have not taken credit, then you lost the opportunity of availing credit and becomes cost for you. I've given you a good tax planning measure today. We all know that we are going to finalize annual return and audit GSTR 9 and 9C by 30th June 2020, which is for financial year 2018-19. There is one question which is, in a pendulum as on date. What is the last date to avail credit? What is the last date to avail credit? Under Section 16, subsection 4 of CGST Act 2017. When you talk about last date under Section 16, subsection 4, it says earliest of due date. What are the earliest of due date? Due date for furnishing return under Section 39 of September following the end of financial year. So for 18-19, due date for filing September return under Section 39. I'm not going into debate of whether 3B is a return under Section 39 or not, because this matter decided by Gujarat High Court, 3B is not a return, but matter is sub judice now before Honorable Supreme Court. So if I assume hypothetically that 3B is a return under Section 39 and of September following end of 18-19, then due date is 20th October 2019. or date of furnishing annual return, which is now 30th June 2020. The day you furnish your return, that date you have to take, whichever is earlier. So in all probability, the latest date is 20th October 2019. 2019, last date to avail credit. Now, if I'm a tax consultant for my client, what I have given advice to my client, and I could have given in the past, I could have given advice to my client that you avail credit. So that first you are within the criteria of last date to avail. Take credit first, so that it should not turn out to be that last date gone. You take credit knowing the fact it's a subjective matter. Rest, I'm going to decide my client and tell my client, but don't use this credit. You avail this credit knowing it is subjective, matter is sub judice before Honorable Supreme Court. If Supreme Court decide in favor of taxpayer for the argument region I cited, then if credit taken within the time frame would be available to you. But if you have not taken credit, just in a dilemma, then you have lost the opportunity that you might not have taken this credit by the last date in terms of section 16 subsection 4. Alongside, I'm giving advice to my client, boss, you take credit, but don't utilize it. So maybe question will come to everyone's mind here. So if I avail credit but not utilized, and tomorrow it turned out to be contrary, Supreme Court says no credit available, then I need to reverse the credit which I took. Then whether interest is leviable, on reversal of credit which was wrongly availed but not utilized. Let me do one more case study here. I'm of the opinion, it is my conclusive view, that if you have wrongly availed the credit but not utilized, and then reversing such credit, no interest going to be levied under section 50 subsection 1. Now I can take one example here and discuss with all of you, and this example will clarify to all of you that no interest can be charged on reversal of wrongly availed credit but not utilized. Look this example so that it would be clear. Example is, one client came up to me and asked, Bimalji, for a particular month I was supposed to avail credit of 6,25,000 in respective account of CGST and SGST. 6,25,000 in a particular month. Now what happened when my accountant was filing 3B? He was putting zero after zero, because what happened on last day when we filed 3B Pan India, same situation, server is occupied. Sometimes we do not know whether my numbers are being really captured in 3B or not, either online mode or offline mode. So he was writing 6,25,000, but the zero he wanted to put in, he was not getting whether it is accepted by the system or not. So he keep on putting zero after zero. By the time he submit 3B, it becomes 6 crore 25 lakh in respective account of CGST and SGST, whereas it should be 6,25,000. So he has availed excess credit, which is wrongly availed, 6 crore 25 lakh as against 6,25,000. Client coming to my office and asking, Bimalji, what should I do now? I said, boss, you need to reverse this credit now, because this is not your credit. So he said, okay, I'm reversing, But tell me importantly, do I require to pay interest on reversal of this excess credit which is wrongly availed but not utilized? This was its question, and similar question I'm now making and connecting with this credit of immovable property which is wrongly availed but not utilized. And if at all I need to reverse suo motu on the basis of Supreme Court judgment on own ascertainment whether interest is leviable or not. This was the issue. I gave the opinion to my client and I said, you need not require to pay interest. You need not require to pay interest on reversal of this wrongly availed credit. I cited three reasons why interest is not leviable. Reason number one, that I have not given any window for revision of my 3B. Revision of my 3B. It may be a case 17, 18 or 18, 19 I have wrongly availed some credit which was wrongly availed I was not aware of. While finalizing my annual return GSTR 9 and 9C of 18-19, I come to know that this was wrongly availed. Now my own ascertainment, I'm reversing this credit which is not utilized. Do I require to pay interest? I was not given window for revising my 3B. Had it been given to me, I could have revised my 3B. Can it be alleged? There was a mention here. First point. Second point. There's a Patna High Court judgment in the case of commercial steel. And Patna High Court judgment has says till the time credit result into reduction in output tax liability, reduction in output tax liability, interest is not leviable. Interest is not leviable. Even section 50 subsection 1 says, if you fail to pay tax, or short pay the tax, fail to pay or short pay, then only interest leviable, otherwise not. So I can just draw one example to describe 50 subsection 1 as well, so that you will get broader picture. And this is again by way of another example so that this subject matter gets conclusion and clarity for all of us together. What is this? Let's say you got 1,000 rupees liability to be paid in GST. You have to pay either through e-cash ledger or through e-credit ledger. You paid 900 rupees from e-cash ledger. Now you need to make payment of 100 rupees through e-credit ledger. Your e-credit ledger is having 500 rupees. 500 rupees. This 500 includes 100 rupees which was wrongly availed credit. Assume, hypothetically. This 500 rupees includes 100 rupees which is wrongly availed credit. Now you paid 100 rupees from your e-credit ledger. Whether department can allege that you have used this 100 rupees which is wrongly availed, which was having other 400 rupees as well, which was eligible credit to you. You can always say as a taxpayer, no, I have used my eligible credit for discharging the GST liability. Hence, under section 50 subsection 1, no situation and circumstances arise for short payment or non-payment because of this wrong credit availed. Because of this wrong credit, 100 rupees availed. When there is no circumstances and situation arise for non-payment and short payment because of this wrongly availed credit, if I reverse the same, why interest is going to be levied? This is my question. So, taking the same clue, now taking back to you for credit on immovable property. First, as a consultant, we must avail credit within the defined time period to come out of dispute that I have not availed credit within the defined time period of section 16 subsection 4. Though, if you have seen my other videos, which is available, and I did lot of webinar during this COVID-19 time period. I have already concluded that section 16 subsection 4 last date to avail credit. I'm saying that this is going for subjectivity, and given and said that so many writs are being filed in Delhi High Court, notice are being issued to the revenue. I'm of the opinion we will see some different answer, and last date cannot be 20th October 2019. I given my reasoning also, which you can see in other webcasts and webinar, my presentation. It is uploaded on my YouTube channel. You can always watch later on. So I'm saying that the credit to be availed come out of dispute of last date, first you avail credit. Only caution you should take not to utilize the same. On reversal of such credit, I given my conclusion by way of analysis, which I did before you, that no interest going to be levied on reversal of such credit. So now in a comment box, I would be looking from all of you, because I'm concluding now ITC, whether you got my this analysis or not. So you should write yes or no, so that I get a feeler of it, that so much of simplicity I wanted to draw, at least you got best of it. So write in the comment box, yes, you're getting completely right. Okay, all right. So a lot of guys are now coming with a yes. So I'm happy that at least you are now participating and trying your best, and trying best from all corners. All right. Moving to now next topic of works contract and construction services. Works contract and construction services. Now pertaining to registration and place of supply. Registration and place of supply. Let me create example, and then I will ask this question to you. And I will connect with the recent advance ruling coming from Karnataka only. So this topic is again very, very interesting topic. And why it is interesting, let me tell you, just 15 days back, I was doing one webinar for AIFTP South Zone. And I discussed this analogy, which is being held right in the advance ruling. So advance ruling holding right means revenue holding my view right. It's quite, I'm really pleased that at least advance ruling is coming out the way I have, discussed this analogy 15 days back in one AIFTP South Zone seminar, webinar. Now, what is this analogy? Let me tell you. And I want each one of you now to give me the attention and participate. We are a maximum half an hour for this deliberation. And I really wanted to give you the best one, which you are listening. And I'm trying my best to make it best of all other webcasts which you have seen. Situation is, and the same situation was taken up in that advance ruling, which is being given by Karnataka. What is the situation? Let's say I'm a contractor. I'm in Rajasthan. My principal place of business is Rajasthan. And this is the same fact of that advance ruling. My principal place of business is Rajasthan. I got a contract from Sri Cement Limited from Karnataka. Sri Cement Limited from Karnataka. And this company wanted me to undertake works contract services in Karnataka. So, contractor in Rajasthan getting contract from client in Karnataka for a contract of works contract to be executed in Karnataka. Now, what is being question posted to advance ruling authority? The first question posted by this main contractor, he asked whether I'm having my principal place of business in Rajasthan, do I require to take registration in Karnataka? This was the first question. Do I require to take registration in Karnataka? First question. And then second question, it is being posted. What happened if I purchase material from Rajasthan supplier, main contractor purchasing material from Rajasthan supplier? So supplier in Rajasthan, main contractor is Rajasthan, but material are being shipped to Karnataka. Karnataka. And reverse, if I'm purchasing material from Karnataka supplier, shipped to Karnataka, but invoice to Rajasthan main contractor. So I have created analogy. Let me discuss. I really want your active participation. You must now open up your mind, and I will go slow here so that you can digest all the provision. Now, first question, I'm a Rajasthan supplier. My principal place of business is Rajasthan. I'm undertaking works contract services in Karnataka for a client located in Karnataka. Do I require to take I said, no, you are not thinking correctly. As per me, my analogy is different. I said that a concept called what is a location of supplier and location of recipient in IGST, because this analogy is very, very important. What is location of supplier? If I am a supplier and my principal place of business is Rajasthan only, and I'm supplying services from Rajasthan only, then my place of business would be location of supplier. But further it says under section 2 subsection 15 of IGST Act, under section 2 subsection 15 of IGST Act, the fourth term, the place of business where from I'm supplying services, that would be location of supplier. Or fixed establishment. And fixed establishment is characterized by sufficient degree of permanence of human or technical resources. Permanence of human or technical resources. If I'm having fixed establishment in Karnataka, and which is characterized by sufficient degree of permanence of human or technical resources, then I may require to take registration in Karnataka. But there is nothing like permanent. I got only site office, all being supervised from my Rajasthan office. Everything is being conducted, viewed, supervised from Rajasthan office. Then there is no fixed establishment. Third, establishment most directly concerned. So for that, Jaipur is my business premises. Principal place, establishment most directly concerned. And last, usual place of residence, which continue to be my Rajasthan location. So unless there is a fixed establishment in Karnataka, I'm repeating again, unless there is a fixed establishment in Karnataka, I need not require to take separate registration in Karnataka. Having said that, now look at the credit mechanism. How the credit will flow to Bimal Jain in Jaipur. I given two examples to you, right? Let me clarify one after another. And I will not be repeating because time is a pause, so you must digest. I'm going slow and trying to make it simple for all of you. That's the reason you must try to listen very carefully. There are two provisions. One is 10(1)(a) of IGST Act, 10(1)(b) of IGST Act. I know that this webcast, this webinar is being watched by learned chartered accountant, lawyers, those who are tax consultant. 10(1)(a) says where supply involves movement of goods, then place of supply would be where delivery terminates. So taking the same example we will discuss, and 10(1)(b) says when there are three parties involved and goods are being transferred by way of transfer of document during or before movement of goods, during or before movement of goods, only by way of transfer of document. Right? In that case, place of supply would be the place of business of the person who is instructing to supply goods to the third party. Now let's listen very carefully, very, very carefully. If Karnataka supplier, and assume I have not taken registration in Karnataka, if Karnataka supplier supplying cement and iron steel to main contractor have not taken registration in Karnataka and principal place of business is Rajasthan, but goods are being supplied at site at Karnataka only, which provision we must apply, 10(1)(a) or 10(1)(b)? If you are from one school, you would be thinking supplier is billing to you in Rajasthan and delivering at site in Karnataka. Another school will say, and which I belong to, and I'm telling you, there are three parties involved. Three parties involved. Supplier in Karnataka, Bimal Jain being main contractor, who is a party at whose instruction goods are being supplied at the client site, project site, and who is the third party? Shree Cement Limited, my client. For them, I procured these goods. And I asked supplier to ship it at Karnataka site, but bill to Bimal Jain in Rajasthan. Can't I apply 10(1)(b)? If it is 10(1)(b), even though goods supplied at Karnataka site by supplier of Karnataka, he will charge IGST because place of supply would be place of business of Bimal Jain, Rajasthan, IGST, of which Bimal Jain will take credit, and then Bimal Jain going to invoice to Shree Cement Limited. Shree Cement Limited, IGST. So this IGST, which is charged by local Karnataka supplier, utilized by Bimal Jain as a contractor in Rajasthan and charged to Shree Cement Limited in Karnataka. Just try to understand, read this analogy. Why this is, creating seamless flow of credit, no separate registration, GST being destination-based consumption tax, it must accrue to the state where ultimately goods and services are used or consumed. In a given example, goods are used in Karnataka. SGST component must accrue to the state of Karnataka. I know IGST sum total of CGST and SGST. And look at the beauty of this transaction. Local supplier in Karnataka, as per me, follow 10(1)(b), will charge IGST, goes to Rajasthan. I'm registered in Rajasthan, I will take credit. Again, I'm going to charge because these goods are used for the provision of works contract services. I'm going to charge IGST to my client in Karnataka. So ultimately, SGST component of IGST has traveled back to Karnataka. So SGST component accrue to the state of Karnataka with this process, where seamless flow of credit chain is not broken, and I was given a relief not to take separate registration in Karnataka. Because if at all I need to take registration in Karnataka, then this is a situation I may require to take 31 registration in 31 different states, which is creating unease of business, not easing the business. Right? First part. And second part, I differentiated example. If I'm procuring raw material from Rajasthan supplier but delivered to the site at Karnataka, then how the scenario would be? In this case, my Rajasthan supplier following 10(1)(b) will charge CGST and SGST, right? I will take credit as a contractor. I will take credit in my Rajasthan registration. And then again, I'm going to raise invoice for IGST to my client in Karnataka. So I'm going to use my CGST and SGST for IGST liability. Ultimately, this goods which is used in Karnataka, SGST component charged by Rajasthan supplier has traveled to the state of Karnataka. And with this process, no registration was required in the state of Karnataka. And this analogy is being held in recent advanced ruling T&D electricals by Karnataka Advanced Ruling Authority. I have taken much time to explain this transaction. Now I want to see in a chat box whether you got my this perspective correctly or not, whether you got my this analysis correctly or not, which is being upheld by one of the advanced ruling, first time coming in, that too from state of Karnataka. Please tell me in a chat box, yes, you have understood my analysis which I said. Say yes or no. Oh, great. So this particular analogy, now okay, all right. Friends, maximum of you are saying yes, you got it. Let me tell you two more factor. When I was doing this AIFTP South Zone webcast, that day I explained this subject matter, the same subject matter which I'm discussing today. Now what you can do, that you can go back to my YouTube channel and see that webcast of works contract is still there, which I did 15 days back. Is still there. What I discussed now is there already 15 days back. This ruling coming just 2 days back. Correlate the subject matter. Now when you can say when I'm analyzing 10(1)(b) of IGST Act, then GST law says you will be given credit when you satisfy condition of section 16 subsection 2, right? And what are those 4 conditions? Being recipient, you must have a tax invoice. Second, you must have received goods or services. Third, your supplier must have paid taxes. And last, being recipient, you must have filed the return. In 10(1)(b) scenario, main contractor who is in Rajasthan is not receiving material. Either it is invoiced by Karnataka supplier and delivered at Karnataka site, or Rajasthan supplier invoicing to contractor in Rajasthan but shipping at Karnataka site. So goods are not actually received. There's one explanation under section 16 subsection 2 clause B. It is called deemed received in case of 10(1)(b) scenario. In case of 10(1)(b), you need not require to receive physically. As good as when it is received by the client, it is as good as you have received the material. So the analogy which I discussed with you just now is being endorsed even for supply of services. We know that goods received and further supplied, like E1 and E2 cell pre-GST era, this concept is now brought for supply of service also. I'm going to use this for works contract services, right? So taking these goods under 10(1)(b) for supply of service is being accepted as a receipt of goods under section 16 subsection 2 clause B, which you can check later. So I've explained all these part in a very lucid manner. Now let me move to the next topic. Exemption and rate for works contract and construction services. See, I'm left out with 20 minutes. I would like to take your questions as well. I got exemption, I got rate, I got time of supply, I got transition provision. These topics are still left out to be discussed for works contract and construction services. So I will try to speech, I will try to, brief my subject matter so that I can give my all input on these parameters so that you get best and maximum of this works contract which we are discussing today. And maybe last 10 minutes, I will open up for the question answer session. Now, for exemption, what all exempted in GST? See, there are 2-3 situations. Let's look at the situation. You have seen under pre-GST, when the main contractor is providing services of composite supply of construction, erection, commissioning, installation, completion, fitting out, repair, maintenance, renovation, alteration. Are you recalling entry 12 of mega exemption notification 12/2000? Are you recalling 25/2012? Entry 12 of mega exemption notification 25/2012, whereby service tax was exempted if you undertake works contract services for central government, state government, local authority, governmental authority, government entity, for construction of civil structure for non-commercial purposes, for educational, cultural and clinical establishment. Are you recalling it was exempted in pre-GST era? My first question goes to all of you now. Which was exempted in pre-GST by this mega exemption notification? Was it continued as exempted in GST? Please answer. Was it exempted in GST? Please tell me. So answer is no. No. Mr. Mahesh, Mr. Nagaraja, Mr. Siddharaja. No, it is not. It is not exempted in GST regime. Now, that is the reason this topic is very important. So let me create one example for all of you. I'm a main contractor. Let's listen very carefully. I'm a main contractor, 100 crore rupees. You are the government authority, either central government, state government, local authority, union territory, governmental entity. You've given me a contract. I subcontracted to my you got specific entry 12, entry 13, entry 14 of mega exemption notification 25/2012. So my services to the government was exempted. Even the subcontractor services to the main contractor of works contract services, if my is exempted, then even subcontractor services to the main contractor was exempted in 329 clause H of that mega exemption notification. So subcontractor giving to the main contractor exempted, main contractor giving to the government exempted. In GST, you should read differently now. You should check differently now. Entry 12, whatever was there in mega exemption notification and the service tax was made taxable in GST regime. Was made taxable in GST regime. So what happened? Main contractor going to charge. Certain specified exemption are being provided. Certain specific exemption are being provided when I provide services to the government. So maybe those who are saying yes, they are pertaining to certain specific entry falling under 12/2017 exemption, service exemption notification under GST. Otherwise, whatever was exempted in pre-GST made taxable in GST regime. Problem was with the rate. What is the rate applicable? Initially, when this rate notification 11/2017 was there, this is the service rate notification in GST, started with 18%. Lot of hue and cry in the market thereafter, got amended thereafter in between, and specifically it was made 12% or 5% depending on the item. So you have to go back to rate notification 11/2017 to check what is the GST rate, which started with 18%, got reduced to 12 or 5% at subsequent date. So when you are looking this rate notification 11/2017, you should look at serial number 3. So you may take down this point to identify the rate, check the rate. Serial number 3, Roman 6, wherein you will find GST rate for composite supply of works contract services to government, central, state, union territory, governmental authority, government entity pertaining to specified entry of 12, which was earlier exempted 12%. The next dispute was, what is the GST rate to be charged by subcontractor to the main contractor? My part I have already done. Main contractor to the government, I done. What is the GST rate to be charged by subcontractor to the main contractor? This was again disputed from day one. But by notification number 1/2018, 1/2018, dated 25th January 2018, 25th January 2018, it was made similar. Whatever is my rate with the government, that is going to be the same rate for my subcontractor to the main contractor. That is going to be the same rate by subcontractor to the main contractor. And you can check serial number 3 of 11/2017, Roman 9, for a rate to identify which is to be charged by subcontractor to the main contractor. It is made same, like if I'm charging 12%, my subcontractor will charge 12%. But this issue is again creating problem. What happened for continuous supply which was existing prior to 25th January 2018? Whether they are going to be two different rates? Second, what happened in the hands of subcontractor? He will charge 12% to the main contractor, but his inward supply may be at a higher rate. Cement, iron, steel, so cement 28%, and services procured by subcontractor 18%, but charged 12%. He may have problem of accumulating credit in the hands of subcontractor. Then what happened? Whether refund of inverted duty structure is available for supply of services? Answer is big no. For supply of services, there is no refund mechanism for inverted duty structure. So these are the problematic areas still existing when we talk about rate notification. Having said the rate notification, now let me move to time of supply. As you know, the time of supply provision. Before I move to time of supply, let me once again get something from your side, that this exemption and rate which I discussed, you have understood reasonably. That would be my take. So you can just answer in your chat box, yes, the exemption and rate by subcontractor to the main contractor, you got it. Write down yes, so that I can move accordingly. All right, yes, perfect. So things are getting fine, and you guys are really getting it. That's my pleasure. I am thankful to each one of you, that those who are participating and trying their best to get it. Now coming to time of supply. I'm into almost 10 minutes left. So let me try out whatever best I can do and take some of the questions within the time permit. Let me do the time of supply now. Since works contract services, it is supply of service, and it is continuous supply of services. Continuous supply of services. Then you need to follow when to raise invoice. And we are during COVID-19 time period. Maybe I would like to take some few more minutes, because this is very interesting, that you are a works contractor and we are during COVID-19 time period. Tax relief measure is being announced, and we can file our GSTR 3B and GSTR 1 with extended time period. But let me ask one question to all of you, and this is a very $1 million question. And you'd be knowing that the one notification 35 oblique 2020 got issued. 35 oblique 2020 says, Bimal, if time limit for any compliances in GST law or rules made thereunder expiring in a period starting from 20th March 2020 to 29 June 2020, then the due date would be 30th June, right? They have created certain exception that what all not applicable for this umbrella kind of tax relief. I'm going to ask you, let's say for every month you're a works contractor and your contract says you need to raise invoice on last day of the month. You need to raise invoice on the last day of the month. And we are during COVID-19 time period. We have been given relaxation for filing 3B and GSTR1 at a future date. My simple question goes to all of you for compliance under section 31. This talks about by when supplier need to raise the invoice. And as per contract, it is on last day of the month. Though your 3B and 1 getting extended, relaxation, can you postpone your raising of invoice? Though 3B and 1 will go at a future subsequent date. This is my simple question. Tell me, can you postpone raising of invoice? Which is supposed to be last date of the month you must raise under section 31. Can you postpone? Say yes or no in your chat box. So, no by Ganesh, Santaram, no. Okay, maximum are now saying, okay, no. It's a no, complete full no, because this exception of this notification 35 oblique 2020 clearly says, no, you need to raise invoice as per the timeline. So for continuous supply of services, section 31 subsection 5 is going to be applicable. 31 subsection 5. It clearly says, as a supplier of works contract services, you must raise your invoice on or before. If the due date of payment is ascertainable in the contract, then you must raise invoice on or before the due date of payment ascertainable. If due date of payment is not ascertainable, then you must raise invoice on or before you receive the payment. In case it is not dependent on due date of payment, it is rather linked to the completion of milestone, then you must raise the invoice on or before that milestone achieved as per the contract. So invoice must be raised. Maybe you can file your 3B and 1 at a subsequent date, discharge the liability, that too on accrual basis. And there are force majeure clause. Time limit, milestone defined in the contract, but there's a force majeure. I cannot execute. If nothing is executable, even though it is linked with the due date of payment, there may be some dispute between promisor and promisee. Promisor and promisee will say, customer will say, boss, nothing is executed because of COVID-19, even though it is linked with the due date of payment. Why I should make payment? Force majeure clause in the contract, or there is no force majeure clause in the contract. It's a bigger topic. I discussed for 1.5 hours yesterday only on force majeure clause when I was doing this webcast for Calcutta, one of the biggest study circle, Central Kolkata Chartered Accountant Study Circle. 1.5 hours I discussed only on force majeure. Clause is there in the contract, is not there in the contract. With the raising of invoice with filing of return 3B or 1 and creating liability. So this is again bigger topic, bigger issue, but that is what the provision time of supply simply says. It would be earliest of two date of receipt of payment, by the recipient or by supplier. By supplier, he is receiving the payment, or date of invoice if raised within 30 days. Otherwise, date of provision of service, that would be time of supply. So these provisions are again telling me that this works contract with the force majeure clause or with no force majeure clause, lot many things you need to go back and check pertaining to works contract and construction services. Coming to the last, transition provision, and transition provision is section 142 subsection 11 clause B and clause C. So works contract services which was entered prior to 1st July 2017 and carried on post 1st July 2017, and there was difference in rate also. So 142 subsection 11 clause B says, if some portion of contract which was service tax leviable, though consideration received in post GST scenario, that will continue to be service tax leviable. Similarly, if you have paid VAT and service tax for a certain portion of running contract carried forward from 1st July 2017, then in that case, whatever VAT and service tax paid, you can avail credit in GST regime and charge GST accordingly on the portion which is being chargeable, levy arise on that portion in GST regime. So you may check the transition provision as well to determine the running contract moving from pre-GST to post-GST scenario. So I have tried to catch up almost. Today I'm going to give you one more fundamental. South India is known because I'm frequent in Kochi, I'm frequent in Hyderabad, I'm frequent in Chennai, I'm frequent in Bengaluru, but Bengaluru I'm doing after long time. And Bengaluru, this you people has allowed me, give an opportunity to make presentation today. I'm so glad that I got this opportunity today to present my topic of works contract. Hope you must have liked this my presentation. I've tried to make it simple in your own language. I'm going to tell you that you guys has to really come back to me. This is a COVID-19 time period. I'm going to share my number with each one of you because this time I'm trying my best to do professionally. If I can extend my help to my professional colleague by responding them to their queries through WhatsApp as per time permit, because I'm getting lot many queries, so I'm trying my best to respond back to their queries. So maybe you can take down my number today, and you can also come back with your feedback, suggestion, your appreciation in case you have liked my presentation today, and then you can carry on in touch with me. During COVID-19, you can send your query also. If time permits, definitely I will try to respond back. But otherwise, for connecting together, walk the talk. Please take my number 98 106 04 563. I'm repeating again 98 106 04 563. So this is all from my side, but the last word, then I will take some of the questions and will conclude my presentation. Last word from my side. We are in a crisis situation, COVID-19, but I don't believe lockdown in the mind. There is lockdown, but there is no lockdown in the mind. And this third lockdown which got started, it comes with the tagline, Jaan hai to jahaan hai. So first of all, you should take care of yourself. Request you to extend your arms of, whatever support you can do for the needy person around you, and whatever best you can do from your side. Maybe all the members of your association can come forward with full-fledged support, with money, your labor, whatever best you can do, must do that. Help each one of us to needy person during this COVID-19 time period. And last, together we will defeat Corona. With this, allow me to say big thanks to each one of you for listening so patiently for last 2 hours. Handing over the mic to the organizer for their questions. Please. Yes, please.
Yeah, sir, it was a really unique way of presentation. It has kept us all engrossed, and we are sure all the participants have liked to the best extent, and they are able to use the this particular slot of 2 hours to the maximum benefit. And thank you for this. We had a few questions which were there part of the question answers, but most of it, at least 70 to 80% of it, have got answered in the course of discussion where you have dealt with it. We have only 2 to 3 questions. With your permission, I would like to take the first question, sir.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So, if with respect to the interior electricals of a building which is already constructed, will this contract of using the material as well as labor to get the interior electrics done, will it also be considered as a works contract? Is a question, sir.
If it is embedded with earth and which can't be used later on, the concept of construction age embedded with earth and value is being capitalized. So you have to look at only these 2 parameters. Embedded with earth, value is capitalized, then credit is not available. But to my mind, in this case, credit is available. I will not term it as a construction of civil structure.
Okay, fine, sir. The next question is on again the input tax credit. You had suggested us that we could actually look at the availment of credit and let's not utilize it with respect to the credits which is already sub judice before the Supreme Court. Now the practical issue that we find here is that once the credit is there in the electronic credit ledger, when we try to file the return, the credit would get used up there. We cannot actually restrict the usage. Let's say IGST, it is not getting, we cannot actually restrict it from we cannot stop it from being used. So what would be the alternative recourse, or is there any option to avail the credit and reverse under protest is one of the queries.
Possible. It can be done in this manner.
Yeah. And the last question, sir. With respect to a contract, this is an office interior contract for 1 crore. Out of this, 45 lakhs of material is imported, and balance 55 lakhs is towards the balance material and the labor portion. With respect to this 45 lakhs imported material, what the supplier is proposing is to do a high C sale to the party directly. And there is a small portion of material and labor which is locally procured and used for a particular contract to the extent of 55 lakhs. So what would be the taxability here, sir? Will it be basically considered as a works contract? If it is a works contract, then will the tax be on 55 lakhs or on the entire 1 crore?
As I told you that when you are doing a high seas of a particular imported material and that is being cleared by the customer, so these goods are belonging to the customer.
Yes.
But if contract, as I said, if supplier is liable but incurred by the recipient, then this FOC need to be included. So this contract need to be checked. To my mind, such contract you should take care of when you're doing high seas directly to the customer. Then you should really take your contract net of that imported value, so that FOC supplies made by customers should not be included in the valuation of supplier for the chargeability of GST. That would be my advice.
Okay. Once we take the net, a very small portion of material and a major portion of labor will be left over in this balance.
Works contract. Just a minute. Works contract does not say that this much minimum percentage of material is only termed as a works contract. If there is material and services, is a works contract services, irrespective of combination percentage. So to my mind, if these are the material which is only consumables, then it is not a works contract. But if it is material, maybe 5%, maybe 7%, then it's a works contract services.
Thank you, sir. You have left no questions of ours unanswered. I would like to hand over the proceedings to CA Prabhava, my colleague, to propose the formal vote of thanks.
Please, please.
A big thank you to the moderator, CA Subramanya BL, for guiding the program in a pleasant manner, and to our dear speaker, CA Bimal Jain, for overcoming the physical barrier and finding time in your busy schedule to make this event successful. You all kept the audience spellbound by communicating valuable insights in a crystal clear manner, and that was plenty of food for thought. I also extend my thanks to the KCIA and the event organizers for their enormous cooperation in the organization of this event. Last but not the least, I would like to take this opportunity to place on record our hearty thanks to all the viewers for attending this webinar and making it a big success, just like our previous webinars. I can surely say that all of you have one thing in common, the desire and willingness to learn. We hope you achieved what you came here to achieve. Please note that the presentation and the video of the webinar will be hosted on the website of KCAA in due course. Before we wrap up, as you may be aware, KCAA has been fighting COVID-19 proactively, engaging itself in food distribution ever since the lockdown began. 8,000 plus 10,000 food packets have already been donated. Yet I request you to generously contribute to this cause through the KCA website, as we are accepting further donations to feed empty stomachs. We are all in the fight. Let us fight it together. Let us all make best use of this downtime to spend time with our families, to increase our knowledge base and develop a new skill. Most importantly, let us all be sincere to our pledge to stay home and stay safe. With this, myself, CA Prabhava Hegde, signing off and goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.